Ninth Circle is a game that is on Kickstarter or was on Kickstarter depending on when you watch this, and the publisher asked me if I wanted to take a look at a factory prototype, and well, the game looked interesting, the art looked pretty awesome, there is a Dante reference in the title, so I thought sure, why not, I don't mind taking another look at games. But I need to clarify that while I think there's still some people out there doing paid previews, I'm not one of them. This video is not one of those. It's just a review. I play the game and then I tell you what I think, and I don't take money for what I do. It's my hobby. So the game is a competitive game of area control, area majority, hell control. We are aspiring demon lords and we're trying to please our big boss Malakota, and we're gonna send our minions represented by cubes to try to take control through majority of different areas on the board. And when we do have majority, then we place these other meeples, devil meeples there to indicate that we have control, like that would be the case right now. Booyah. And then can be multiple players that have the same amount of influence and minions in a certain area. Now there's an interesting mechanic here that about control. I'm sure you have played games that have similar mechanics. If two players are tied for majority, like here we have yellow and purple tied for majority at 4, they're so busy fighting with each other, then the next player gains control. And you lose control only when somebody takes it from you. If, for example, later I was to remove all of these cubes here, and these two players are still tied, control doesn't change. You don't even need to have cubes in an area to retain control as long as no one is taking it from you. That's an interesting mechanic. But really, the heart of the game is to send cubes and meeples to the board. And the board is highly variable. It is built by placing these components here in a random order around the board. And which ones of these tiles you use will change from game to game. Some tiles are not used depending on the number of players. So high variety there. The sections are labeled with letters from A to H, and Malakota at the beginning of the game goes in area A. Then, at the beginning of each round, each player will need to commit where they send their minions. Each player has a personal display such as this one, and you want to place it in an orientation that matches the letters on the display with the letters on the main board. You have your own personal screen behind which you will hide your selection, and you will have a variable number of cubes that you will commit to different areas where you want to send them. Suppose that that's my placement right now, which is probably terrible, but I'm just doing it kind of at random to show how it works. You also have these 3 arrows which you don't have to use necessarily. And you can use them to indicate areas where you want to move cubes from one area to the next. You simply place them so that the arrow points where the cube you want to move is coming from and where it goes. This is also how you can place cubes in the 9th circle, which is the center of hell itself. You cannot place them directly in the 9th circle. You can use game effects to do that. Once everybody has their selection, we reveal it, and then we simply place our cubes in the corresponding areas. These go to H, this goes to F, this goes to D, and these two go to C. Also, I'll implement the arrows, so I'm going to move a cube here, and a cube here, and a cube down there. That's the idea. Once we have a ton of cubes on the board, we gotta do a couple of things. First, starting with the round where Malakota is. Malakota will move at the end of each round. We decide, we check who has control, who has dominance, and we place our little meeple demons there to indicate that. I think that would be the case right now. Oh, even yellow even gets that one there. So we do that. Then we use powers, the powers indicated on the spaces where we are. And each area will give you a different power. From Portal allows you to switch all the cubes in that area with all the cubes in another area. Berserk allows you to turn one of your cubes into this big monstery cube that counts as 3 for dominance next turn when you're checking majority. Things like that. Get new cubes, destroy cubes, mind swap is a fun one because you are basically exchanging the position of 2 cubes, but thematically speaking, it counts as only the mind swap. And why is that interesting? Because there's some effects that wouldn't allow you to physically move your minions, so you're only moving their minds. Fun stuff. After you use all the realm powers, then you score points. Because then for each realm where you have control, you will score a point. If you have majority in the realm where Malakota is, then you were particularly good at sucking up to him, and so you score 2 points for that. Then finally, we look at the center of hell, where again game effects may have placed cubes. Cubes placed there at the end of a round. The cubes that are there at the end of the round become Malakota's buffet. And he's going to eat them, but he's particularly pleased that you gave him those. So the player with the most cubes in there will score 5 points. The second will score 2 points, and so on and so forth. Or maybe I should say, when you are checking dominance also, you will lose a cube. So that's kind of like a balance. When you score points, I mean, you will lose a cube in the area where you have your minions. So that's a little bit of balancing element. There is also an element of acceleration, because you see these stars. There are many effects whose value is star. Move star minions, destroy star minions, and what that means depends on where your score is. Early in the game, any effects that has a star has a quantity of 1. Later, if I can destroy star minions and my score is there, that means 2, and that may even mean 3 later on in the game. The game continues until Malakota is taking a whole loop around the board and is back to initial space. That triggers the end of the game. Not likely to happen. What is a lot more likely to happen is that somebody has scored 25 points or more. Then you finish the round, and at the point the player with the highest score wins the game. I like this game enough, but not a ton, and sometimes that happens. Not every review can just be a glowing endorsement or like completely negative. Some games are in between, and in my opinion, in my experience, that's how I feel about Ninth Circle. I liked it enough, but not a ton. I like the general idea very much. It's basically an auction game. It's like secret bidding on multiple locations, and I like auction games, so that's super neat. It's an auction game with a lot of chaos, randomness, because a lot of people are committing a lot of resources to a lot of different places, and with unique effects. So I like the core idea, no problem there. And yet, then at the end, at the same time, the game felt very chaotic, which is okay in a sense. I guess it's hell, so that feels thematic, but then also restrictive at the same time. What do I mean? The locations are not all born equal, and the order in which they are resolved has massive importance. Some locations are going to be virtually useless because they come early in the resolution of the different actions, and you know that somebody getting a certain effect later on can completely undo what you did. So later locations in the resolution have a lot more power, a lot more valuable, and that works the experience in a way that somebody has it. Now I have to choose, should I put everything there to take that location from them, or spread out my things and do different things, which usually is a nice and interesting trade-off. But here again, the power of going last and using some of those effects to undo what other people have done, that makes not really a trade-off. Very often I'll have to spend everything to get that powerful action, and that may not be enough just because of how the math works. I may still not have enough to do that. So I guess that my point is that I like the idea of the trade-off. You can go earlier, you can go later, but usually there's a trade-off somewhere. If you go later, well, there is some other penalty, some other things. But here, some locations will be a lot better than others. And so that you feel that it becomes pretty confrontational, that everybody's converging upon those few locations. And so the possibility of bidding on so many places, doing so many things, in truth feels a lot narrower and a lot more constrictive. P.S. Of course, if your two opponents are fighting from that location, then you can take control and grab a lot of points from other different things, or grab enough points, because again, some effects are better than others, and when they come later in the turn, they're just massive. And the order doesn't change radically. If there is an action which is super powerful because it's the last one to be resolved now, it's going to be pretty very powerful next turn because it's the second to last. And maybe the one that is the new last isn't that great, so that is still the most powerful. So it's kind of weird to me that the agency, you have possibility of spreading your agency into a lot of places, which seems potentially good. But in truth, there are some options that are a little more interesting than others. And I found that if you start falling behind, then the players may be able again to play the game of the mighty locations and the mighty effects coming last or later. And it's just very hard to catch up. The acceleration element, again, is usually pretty good. But here again, if there is an action this week, doing it 3 times is not won't change much, but somebody who may be ahead because they have a powerful action, now they can do that action to a larger magnitude. That also helps. So the game is not, again, there is the element of chaos and bidding, which I like, and somehow as I was playing the game, I was enjoying it less and finding it less interesting than I thought. The production looks good. Some of the icons I found a little bit counterintuitive, but then my friends didn't, so maybe it's just my problem. The screens that you saw, there's no way to store them in the box, of course, so you'll have to take them down and build them every time, which is just so many other games come with the folded screen. You don't need the roof. I think that would have been enough to have screens that you just fold and you put back in there. There are, I didn't show you production-wise, these very cute little magnetic boxes, cardboard boxes to store the components of each player. Again, a little magnet here. They're called the cages where you keep your prisoners. They're cute. They're cute. The presentation is nice. But gameplay, again, I didn't fall in love with it. I just think that there are other area control games that have better ways of balancing different game elements. The art on the cover is awesome. No doubt about that. And so my review about Ninth Circle is mixed because my experience with the game felt mixed.